So this is Karthikeyan, Associate Professor, School of Physiotherapy, SBV Chennai campus. So today, in this session, I am going to give a brief idea about joint structure and function in biomechanics. First of all, in biomechanics, the importance of joint structure and function help us to diagnose the musculoskeletal conditions related to joint pathology and the functional disability that is going to be the end result of those conditions. So, to understand the analysis or diagnosis and plan for its rehabilitation, we should have a primary idea of joint structure and what are the functions. Joint design. A basic idea on joint design. The articulation. That is very important. The two bony surfaces joints to form a joint. It articulates to form a joint. So arthrology, it is a scientific study of joints. Kinesiology, it is a study of motion of human body. Why we should know about joint function? Basically, the primary function of joint is stability and mobility. Coming to the materials that is present. So, if you take a joint, the joint is being surrounded by the tissues, which is nothing but your connective tissues. So, the tissues that make up the joint structure is the connective tissue that is going to withstand the forces acting on the joint, and also it has some composition of the tissues. This diagram represents the very clear idea of the joint. Every joint has an articular cartilage. A synovial joint will have an articular cartilage. The ligament that gets attached, the capsule, bursa, the tendon that comes from the muscle, and enthesis. What is enthesis? The point of contact between the ligament and the bone, the attachment site, we call that as an enthesis. So this is the composition of the joint surface. You have lots of collagen, chondroitin sulfate, and the hyaluronic acid that is present in the synovial membrane that is present in the joint. So you have two things. One is extracellular matrix. So in extracellular matrix, fibrillar component and interfibrillar component are the materials that is present in each and every connective tissue. Let's brief out what are the connective tissues that is present in the joints. Bones, capsules, bursa, cartilage, fat pads, menisci, ligaments, and tendons. So now we are entering into the extracellular matrix. What is this matrix? A part of connective tissues outside the cells. This determines the tissue function. So the extracellular matrix mainly contains of proteins and water. It is organized into fibrillar components in surrounding matrix. So what are these fibrillar and interfibrillar components? Fibrillar components are nothing but it's your collagen and elastin. So let's go in detail about collagen. Very important material that is present in all the connective tissues that is going to withstand more amount of tensile stress. Whenever we say tension, tensile stress, the connective tissue that is going to withstand the tension is your ligament and the capsule. Most abundant protein that is present in the body is your collagen. 20 to 30% of all the proteins that across the body. So it is a primary restraint of tensile strength, resistance to tensile stress. There are various types, type 1, type 2, type 3, 4, 5, 6. So type 1 is accounting 90% of the collagen that is present in tendons, ligaments, menisci, fibrocartilage and synovium as well as the capsule. Type 2 collagen most profoundly found in the intervertebral discs. Type 3, skin, capsules and muscles. Elastin. This is another material that is present, is found in the connective tissues. So it have a very good property of making the connective tissue undergo a stretch, and again it recoils to its own length or the shape. So elastin makes up very smaller portions. So aorta, which connect 30% of the elastin and 20% of the collagen. Why? Yes, of course, it's the largest artery in the body that takes all the oxygenated blood. So the aorta has to stretch. So the amount of stretch depends upon the presence of collagen and elastin. Interfibrillar component. This contains water, proteins, primarily the glycoprotein and proteoglycans. Glycoproteins are found in all the tissues and proteoglycans are also found mainly in the connective tissues. Carbohydrates, these along with glycoprotein, they form a unit which we call it as glycosaminoglycans. Especially if you see the cartilage has a proteoglycan that is called aggrecan. So this is going to give the cartilage strength. So now in this session, detailing, we are going to go for the specific connective tissues, ligaments. The main connective tissue, there are lots of ligaments. Deltoid ligament present in the ankle, iliofemoral ligament that is present in the hip joint, ischiofemoral ligament, pivotofemoral ligament around the hip. Then your annular ligament, the radius, the head of the radius, very important ligament, anterior longitudinal and posterior longitudinal ligaments. So all these ligaments play a very important role in giving stability. It is a connective tissue connecting one bone to another. So the blends, this connective tissue, that is your ligaments, blends with the capsule always. It's getting reinforced with the capsule mostly. And ligaments mainly composed of type 1 collagen. An exception ligament of flavum, which is more amount of type 1 collagen is present here. So these collagens present in the ligaments are the primary restraint of tensile stress. So site of attachment, as I have already mentioned it is called as enthesis. So the site of attachment of the ligament to the bone is known as an enthesis. The ligaments are named based on the locations. Next connective tissue, tendons, attached, and it connects the muscle to the bone. That's very important. So we call that as what? The tendon that connects the muscle, myotendinous junction. 95% of type 1 collagen is present in tendon. That's the reason our muscle stretches. So it is undergoing a tension. It is undergo or it resists the tensile stress. The interfibular component contains mainly the water, proteoglycans, and glycoprotein. So if you see the tendon, the epitenon, parotenon, endotenon, all the coverings of the tendon. So the epi and paratenon together, we call that as a tenosynovium. One of the very common conditions we see, overuse injuries. As a physio, we deal with the repetitive strain injuries, the inflammation of the tenosynovium. We call this tenosynovitis. This is also known as tendon sheath, which will be subject to high level of friction. Bursae, these are flat sacs of synovial membrane. The inner side of sacs are separated by fluid film. So bursae, that is present between the tendon and the bone, muscle and the bone, ligament and the bone. One of the very important connective tissues is the hardest of the connective tissue, mainly type 1 collagen, primarily hydroxyapatite, inorganic material. Bone cells, if you take it as a bone cells, then it's osteoblast, osteoclast, and fibroblasts. What is this osteoblast? These are bone producing cells. Osteoclast are bone resorpting cells. But actually bone comes basically from the fibroblasts. These are primary bone forming cells. The inner layer is a cancellous bone, the outer is a cortex. So cancellous bone, calcified tissues forms very thin plate. So these form a system or a network of bony area that we call it as trabeculae. Trabecular density, orientation, distribution of weights. So the outer covering of the bone, we all know it's a very osteum, fibrous layer covering the entire surface of the bone, except articular cartilage. You have mature and immature bone, irregularly formed bone or woven bone, lamellar bone forming an adult mature bone. So this represents the diagrammatic representation of bone. So the structure of the bone, you have the epiphysis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. Epiphysis, if you see the growing end of the bone, epiphyseal region, connects the diaphysis through a metaphysis region. So you can see in the picture the trabeculae, how the structure of trabeculae is present. So there are lots of cells, the small bone cells, we call it as osteons, forms the Haversian canals. These are all very important structures in the inner layer of the bone. Okay, right. Now coming to the cartilage. The types of cartilage, we have fiber cartilage, elastic cartilage, hyaline cartilage. So they are based on the color that's being represented. So cartilage, mostly type 2 collagen, because type 1 is tensile and type 2 is a primary restraint of compressive stresses. Cartilage is subjected to more amount of compression during weight bearing situations in all the joints. Hyaline cartilage that forms a thin covering at the ends of the bones in synovial joints. So the cells in the articular cartilage are chondrocytes, chondroblasts. So these produce glycosaminoglycans, glycogen, proteoglycans, collagen. So all these are present hyaluron and the protein. So cartilage, articular cartilage contains more PG, proteoglycans, than other joint structures. Aggregate is the main amount of proteoglycan that is present in the cartilage that is going to withstand the compressive stresses. So now we are entering into the general properties of the connective tissue. So all these connective tissues are subjected to certain properties. So it acts as a homogeneous material, it acts as a heterogeneous material. So it's subjected to a mechanical behavior when it is getting loaded. In the initial stages, the loading is going to be accepted, but in the later stages, the loading is getting adapted for a long duration. The mechanical behavior of a connective tissue stress strain curve is a very important thing that we should learn. Failure and stiffness. What is the stress? What is strain? That we should define stress and strain. So when the load, the forces are going to be applied to a structure or material, the internal resistance that is going to get deformed. Okay, the structure is going to get altered. The internal reaction is produced by the structure. That we call it as stress. So stress is defined as a force per unit of cross-sectional material. What is a strain? So on applied force, the structure changes the shape, its length, and the weight. So this change we call it as a strain. How you can say we can depict by load deformation curve. So what is the saturation point of a material to undergo a stress and strain? So it is being well explained by the load deformation curve. So the load deformation curve plays a very important role on applying the load on the connective tissue. The elastic region, that is the initial stages of loading, the material is going to subject it to forces. It undergoes an elastic region where it is getting subjected to load for the first time. Then on the later stages, it goes for a plastic region. It's the area of plastic deformation where it will develop complete adaptations. But as longer and longer the load is being applied to the material, then it will go for an ultimate failure point. So this we call it as load deformation stress strain curve. So that's very important. So Young's modulus of elasticity, it tells that. So as the curve goes higher, or it is going to go steeper, it is the mechanical behavior where it is subject to or it is undergoing a tensile loading. So as it goes steeper and steeper, the modulus of elasticity is very, very high. As the curve is coming down, the modulus of elasticity is very, very low. So, but one point it will go for a break. So this is about the mechanical behavior of the connective tissue. Thank you.